Welcome back to another episode of Crit Talks with Dr. Anand Kulkarni by Wise Words. This episode is all about transition from literary criticism to literary theory. We're getting into some unknown depths of the theory. So I ask Dr. Anand Kulkarni to speak on literary theory.
We cannot have a direct answer to the question, what is literary theory? This is because there is not a readily available definition of literary theory. This also refers to the elusiveness and complexity of the term literary theory. Still, we can have a workable definition, and I think we can understand that definition even after knowing the discourses that come under the rubric called literary theory. I think the best way to understand literary theory is to compare and contrast it with literary criticism. Literary criticism is generally supposed to be practical and pedagogical, whereas literary theory is supposed to be overarching, providing broad frameworks of analysis, set of ideas and notions, and some theories and methodologies as well. So theory is overarching, comprehensive, providing frameworks. Criticism is practical, practically applicable, and appreciative as well. However, we should not forget that the relationship between literary criticism and literary theory is symbiotic. I mean that literary theory and literary criticism form and reform each other. There are some overlapping concerns, overlapping issues, and in spite of all this, there is also a very strong line of separation, strong line of difference between literary criticism and literary theory. And it is here precisely where theory becomes different from literary criticism. And it is not just chronological, though literary theory has its prime time from 1960s and 70s onwards. Still, literary theory has its origins from the classical antiquity. Of course, we shall not go back to the classical antiquity and try to understand the roots of literary theory. We shall limit ourselves to the literary theory in the mid part of the 20th century. Literary theory of 1960s and 70s is very radical in nature, very anti-traditional, anti-conventional, subversive, and reversive also. It reverts and subverts the given order of understanding. Before that, I think it is sensible and advisable also to understand what led literary criticism to lose its status and what allowed literary theory to make its arrival on the scene of literary studies. We all know that literary criticism in the modern period was being carried out or was being practiced under different categories, in different categories and under different headings. For example, there were critics of great eminence like T.S. Eliot, I. Richards, and Ezra Pound, who were more bothered about the objective and practical criticism. On the other hand, there were some critics as well, like E.M.W. Dillard and C.S. Lewis, who were more concerned with the historical and moral interpretation of literature. And the more recently perhaps was the development of new criticism in America, and new critics were exclusively concerned with the textual study they were more bothered about the objectivity and the primacy of literary texts. So they were textual, autotelic, and less teleological. That is, they were not much bothered about the end of the objective of literary works. They were more bothered about the format, the structure of literary texts. Now, what led this literary criticism to lose its status and give way to literary theory? I think before literary theory rose on the scene of the literary studies in Europe and in America, and more specifically in France, there were some critics who were working as pioneers in this direction. For example, in America, there were critics of great eminence like J.H. Miller and Paul Liman, Barbara Johnson, Gayatri Spivak, Edward Said, and most of the LA critics. These were the American critics who were working towards some concerns which created a welcome environment for a conducive environment for the rise of literary theory in America. In England also, we shall see that there were critics who were striving very hard and trying to bring into certain different ideas which would probably be called as extra textual or extra literary. For example, there were critics of the eminence like Terence Hawkes, who was very radical in his approach towards literary works, towards literary interpretation. Christopher Norris, who was very much responsible for introducing deconstruction to the Britishers, to the English people. There were other critics, for example, the Marxist critics like Raymond Williams, Terry Eagleton, Stuart Hall, and Catherine Belsey, who were of great eminence, and they practiced Marxist approach to literature in different capacities and with different ideas at the back of their mind. There were other very important critics also. For example, there was Susan Bassnett, who was more interested in comparative literature, in the study of comparative literature. There was a very prominent British critic called Elk Behmer, who was interested in post-colonial studies. So these were the critics, I believe, who were very prominent and who were trying to create the necessary background, both in America and in England, and in Australia and in Canada, and in France, of course, for the literary theory to make its presence felt. So I think these were the literary critics in the literal sense of the term, though they tried to adopt the ideas and the frameworks provided by literary theory later on. These were the critics, and their practices, their exercises, I think, provided the necessary background, the necessary environment for literary theory to make its presence felt in the Anglo-American academic studies. With this information, I think we shall turn towards the nature of literary theory. I think that helps us, and we shall understand the characteristics of or features of literary theory, which may not be necessarily or conventionally characteristics or features, but for our convenience we shall call them to be features. For example, literary theory is not interpretative in its nature. That is, it doesn't look for meaning. It doesn't go for the interpretation of a literary text or a literary work with the intention to uncover its meaning, and also with the hidden agenda that there is meaning lying in the literary text, and it is the role of the reader or the critic to discover the meaning. So, in short, it is not interpretative. Secondly, it is not disciplinary. It doesn't believe in discipline. At the most, it is interdisciplinary because it brings in so many extra literary or non literary approaches for the study of literary works. It is in that sense, it is interdisciplinary, we can say. Next is it is linguistic in its orientation, and this I think is very important aspect of literary theory. Linguistic in the sense that it redefined language, and by extension it redefined literature also, because saying that literature is made of words and saying that literature is a, a linguistic construction makes a lot of difference, because then language comes into play, and language was radically redefined by literary theorists or theorists for that matter. So it is linguistic, and if language is not fixed, reliable, communicative, intelligible, and meaningful, then literature which is made out of words or literature which is a linguistic construction is surely not fixed, reliable, stable, universal. That is of course very consequential, and we shall have to understand it in that context of language. So literary theory is primarily linguistic in its orientation. There are two other things I think we should take into account. One is that literary theory looks upon literary work as text, and the famous French theorist Roland Barthes has written wonderfully on how work changes into text. This is of course not the time to go into the details and understand what his idea about text is, but suffice it to say, it is enough to say that literary work is understood as literary text, by which we mean that text becomes a public scripting. It does not remain any more disciplinary, enclosed, bounded, and limited to certain things. It remains open, and it always carries itself with the readers. This also means that text is not fixed, stable, and does not contain meaning. So there is a radical reinterpretation of, or a subversive understanding of literary work in the terms of text. This is one very important aspect of literary theory. The other aspect is that literary theory was responsible in bringing the reader in an active mode in literary studies. Before literary theory, the reader's role was limited, or the reader was at the receiving end. But with the rise of literary theory, the reader became very prominent. A reader was considered to be an important aspect of, element of literary studies, or a factor of literary studies, which was earlier ignored but which was given due credit. Now, reader of course is not an individual. We shall have to understand this, otherwise there is bound to be a lot of misunderstanding about reader. Reader is not a specific individual, or reader is not a specific person. Reader is a consciousness. Reader is strategies which are adopted to read and understand literary texts, or to read and explore literary texts. That is very important to know. The next thing is that literary theory tried not just this, it also went for redefining the boundary of the institutional setup of literature, because it raised certain questions about the very nature and function of literature. Earlier, literature was considered to be an entirety, was considered to be an aesthetic construction or an aesthetic work. It was also considered to be, by the sociological, later on Marxist critics and writers, a work which could be of some use to the society or something which can contribute towards the social change. Literary theorists did not agree with these kinds of concerns. That is why they radicalized the established notions of literature, and they changed the whole setup of literature. Now literature has come to be understood not as something universal, something absolute, something true, something fixed, something eternal, something message giving, but something always in fluidity, always in flux. So literature is in fluid form, it is not in fixed form. It always floats and gets formed and reformed with every next reader. Other idea that is very important, I think, and that also forms one of the important aspects of literary theory, and it is author. Famously, Roland Barthes wrote the essay The Death of the Author, and even though later on he tried to withdraw himself from the arguments that he made into the essay, still it became a very popular essay, and it became an important intellectual shorthand for critics and writers, critics and readers across the world, as far as the conception of the author is concerned. So the idea of the author was changed, radically changed, and author did not enjoy the same privilege and the same right that the author used to have in the conventional sense, in the conventional environment. In criticism, though new critics did not give much importance to the writers, and there was something called intentional fallacy also, we all know that. But the author was not declared to be dead. However, with the rise of literary theory, the author was declared to be dead, and the text was considered to be a tissue of quotations drawn from the culture. Naturally, there was a complete reconfiguration of the concept of author, of the idea of author. So author lost his or her customary, traditional, prestigious position. Author no more remained the center of literary activities, literary studies. Earlier, author was supposed to be not only the writer of, the composer of, the creator of literary work, but the meaning giver as well. So, writing and meaning were believed to be springing from the author. Literary theorists dismissed these conventional ideas, and author became less important, or literally not very important. There are other two things I think we shall discuss, and we shall end our discussion of literary theory. One is that literary theory, in its primary form, in its basic proposition, tried to raise challenge to the very idea of center or foundation. All theorists from 1960s onwards, especially post-structural theorists, were clearly and decidedly against any kind of center. To take the name of a very prominent theorist, of course, is Jacques Derrida, the French theorist. Center was challenged. By center we mean something which is very important, something which is at the center of all literary activities. Maybe the author, maybe the text, maybe the meaning, or something of that sort. But that was being challenged. With this challenge, there were a lot of changes also in the literary composition and literary interpretation. The second idea that was very important for literary theorists was that they were against any conventional common sense understanding. They produced a very strong critique of the common sense. By common sense we mean something which is established, something which is understood or taken as rational, and acceptable. So, this was a kind of challenge given to the established idea or ideas which were thought to be the commonsensical ideas. Naturally, these aspects and ideas of literary theory totally changed the understanding of language, and uh, for our purpose, the understanding of literature. I think this much is enough to go with. Primarily, we shall have succeeding episodes in which perhaps we would be able to deal with the discourses or theories, and it is there perhaps I think we can have a better idea of literary theory. I shall end with a very tentative and functional definition of working definition of literary theory, and it is this: that literary theory is a mix of very many different theories or approaches. They may be psychoanalytical, anthropological, sociological, Marxist, new historicist, structuralist, post structuralist, post colonial, and of course of some other types. Fine then.
Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening views on literary theory. Of course, this is a very contentious topic in the entire field of literary criticism and theory. That right from the word theory itself, the problem begins. And then as we move ahead, that problem gets more and more intensified. But with today's background, which you have laid a kind of foundation for the discussions of so many complex topics which we are going to take up, like Marxism or like structuralism, or of course post structuralism and deconstruction. So today's session would work as a kind of framework in which we can set all those lectures which we are going to conduct after this. So I thank you for conducting this session. I thank the audience for being very participative in this entire process. I thank Ganesham for his active participation. So keep watching our coming episodes on Crit Talks with Dr. Anand Kulkarni. Thank you for your endorsement.